We're also following breaking news out of Oshawa this morning. General Motors announcing that it's cutting the third shift at its Oshawa plant. So for more on what this means for workers, we're joined live by CP24's Courtney Heels. Good morning, Courtney.
The American auto industry is facing a catastrophe unlike anything we've seen in decades. And it all started with a single legislative choice. Within days of additional tariffs being announced, factories shut down, thousands of workers were laid off, and some of the most renowned vehicle brands in the world, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, were abruptly plunged into chaos. But is this truly simply about commerce, or is something more going on? In this video, we lay down exactly what's happening in the industry, from boardrooms and factory floors to car lots and living rooms, and what it means for the future of driving in North America. What's coming isn't simply another economic tale, it's a tipping point. Factories in Canada and Mexico, crucial nodes in Stellantis' manufacturing network, were abruptly shut down. Thousands of workers were advised not to appear for duty, and many were left with no clear indication of when or if they'd be returning to work. In the United States, layoffs followed rapidly, starting with roughly 200 jobs lost at GM's Factory Zero plant in Detroit, a site focused on electric vehicle manufacture. Stellantis also halted operations at its Warren truck assembly plant in Michigan, displacing approximately 1,000 workers temporarily. While the tariffs were implemented as a policy to safeguard American workers and industry, their immediate consequences prompted severe concerns. Rather than encouraging automakers to relocate manufacturing to the United States, the move looked to cause problems across all borders. In total, the initial factory closures led to job losses of about 4,500 in Canada and 2,500 in Mexico. In the United States, 900 additional workers connected to international supply chains were also affected. The core issue is how modern automobiles are designed. Today's vehicle manufacturing is deeply globalized. A single model could have an engine built in Mexico. Electronic systems were purchased from Canada, with final assembly completed in the United States. This method, known as cross-border manufacturing, aimed to maximize efficiency while keeping production prices competitive. However, the imposition of tariffs, which are essentially import taxes, has made that model significantly more expensive to sustain. Stellantis' imported engine, gearbox, and dashboard system costs increased by 25% overnight. That type of rise not only strains the balance sheet, but also fundamentally alters how a corporation runs. Fortune and the Detroit News reported that the company had little choice but to halt production in regions most vulnerable to rising costs. The Windsor Assembly Facility in Ontario, which makes vehicles such as the Chrysler Pacifica and the impending electric Dodge Charger Daytona, was among those affected, as was the Jeep Compass and Dodge Journey facility in Toluca, Mexico. From the outside, it may appear that this was only a temporary response, a production pause until the storm passed. However, internal communications obtained by CNN and Electrek suggest otherwise. Stellantis executives apparently considered these shutdowns as emergency measures to avoid even bigger losses. According to one CEO, running production lines under present price conditions would be like pouring money down the sink. These actions have far-reaching implications that extend beyond the confines of the company. Auto workers who have spent years, if not decades, making cars are now faced with abrupt uncertainty. For many, these are not just jobs, but professions with pensions, union contracts, and community ties. The closures have an impact not just on individual workers, but also on the towns and communities that rely on these factories for employment. When a large employer suspends operations, cafes, suppliers, logistics firms, and even schools begin to feel the strain. The ripple effect is also being felt at the consumer level. Dealerships that typically receive a steady flow of inventory are seeing their lots start to empty. As one dealer in Michigan put it, "We used to have dozens of Jeeps coming in every week. Now we're lucky if we get 5. The wait times for popular models are expanding, often ranging beyond 6 to 8 weeks. For customers, the dilemma is whether they should wait or search elsewhere. What is evident is that these developments have reignited debate about the North American auto industry's reliance on a global supply chain. The idea of building everything in one country is impractical, at least for now. Vehicles today are extremely complicated, with thousands of components and systems. Few manufacturers operate in a really localized manner nowadays. The tariff decision effectively punished this reliance. Interestingly, some analysts have suggested that corporations may use this disruption to justify already planned movements. As one industry source told the Globe and Mail, Stellantis did not want to close Windsor. They simply lacked a plausible excuse. Now they have one. This stance mirrors a broader skepticism in the car industry. Tariffs, while politically popular in some circles, may simply serve as a convenient cover for already announced cost-cutting and restructuring plans. There is also concern that the tariffs will have the opposite effect, hastening automakers' exit from North America. If the costs get too high and the returns are too low, some may feel it is not worth the investment. Promises to reinvest in the U.S. market may disappear gradually, replaced by a smaller presence and more aggressive cost-cutting strategies abroad. Others say that in the long run, tariffs may compel corporations to reconsider their sourcing strategies. In theory, if construction in North America becomes prohibitively expensive using imported parts, there may be a greater incentive to manufacture parts domestically. But this is a gradual and costly transformation that cannot be completed immediately. So far, the numbers do not lie. The first round of layoffs and facility closures began almost immediately, and while automakers first portrayed them as transitory, the lack of a clear timescale or comprehensive recovery plan has left workers and onlookers concerned. In response to the Windsor plant closure, the Canadian Labour Congress stated that the increased tariffs threaten more than 500,000 Canadian car and supply chain employment. Meanwhile, over the border in the United States, auto worker unions are increasingly concerned, not just about the layoffs, but what they signify. An industry that has already undergone a decade of upheavals is becoming increasingly unstable, from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, steel frames to software-driven dashboards, and local dealerships to worldwide online sales. Add tariffs and geopolitical trade conflicts to the mix. Take Jeep as an example. The name has always been linked with tough reliability, off-road prowess, and an adventurous spirit. Jeeps have long been regarded as dependable vehicles, capable of managing harsh situations, such as rocky terrain or snowy roads. However, something else is currently putting Jeep's identity to the test: uncertainty. Production of the Jeep Compass has been discontinued. The Compass, manufactured at the Stellantis plant in Toluca, Mexico, has become one of the company's entry-level models. However, with tariffs now significantly raising the cost of imported transmissions, electronic modules, and infotainment systems, the economics of continued production simply do not make sense. What was once a consistent, dependable manufacturing process has been halted indefinitely. This means that dealerships across North America are experiencing a decrease in available stock. Buyers are being quoted wait times of up to 2 months, and others walk away entirely. Even Jeep vehicles built in the United States have not been spared the consequences. The Wrangler and Grand Cherokee, while constructed on American soil, still rely extensively on foreign components from Canada and Mexico. With supply channels affected, even domestically built vehicles are experiencing production delays. One Ohio dealer said that their regular inventory of 30 to 40 Jeeps had decreased to only 5 available units. Others have observed that customers are becoming more aware of the shrinking lots and are cautious to place additional orders without precise delivery dates. Dodge's condition is no better. Dodge is well known for its aggressive appearance and high-performance vehicles, particularly the Charger and Challenger. These vehicles are more than just transportation. They are cultural icons. However, like many high-performance cars, they rely on a complex, frequently worldwide supply chain. The Brampton assembly plant in Ontario, Canada, where the Charger and Challenger are manufactured, has been forced to close temporarily. The halt is the direct effect of tariffs, which have dramatically raised the cost of imported steel, powertrain components, and onboard electronics. The increased expenditures make it impractical to keep the plant running at its old capacity. For Dodge enthusiasts, the news has been difficult to accept. Online forums are flooded with complaints from disgruntled owners and prospective buyers about delays, limited availability, and escalating pricing. Some are even reconsidering their devotion to the brand, citing a lack of openness and doubts about whether the vehicles they desire will be available in the near future. One Dodge enthusiast in Michigan complained that he had been waiting 3 months for a custom-ordered Charger Scat Pack, only to be informed that the purchase had been canceled with no explanation. For a company that prides itself on its image of strength, speed, and attitude, this type of interruption is more than just an inconvenience. It is a blow to their reputation. The crisis is also having an impact on Stellantis' truck brand, Ram. The Ram 1500, one of North America's most popular full-size pickup trucks, is manufactured in Sterling Heights, Michigan. On paper, this should provide some tariff protection because the final assembly is done in the United States. However, in actuality, Ram, relies heavily on parts from other countries, particularly engines from Mexico and crucial electronics from Canadian vendors. With tariffs raising the cost of those imports by 25%, Ram's production pipeline is severely constrained. The result is that output has been drastically reduced. Dealers in rural and working-class areas, where trucks like the Ram 1500 are critical tools for small business owners, farmers, and tradesmen, are seeing only a fraction of their usual inventory. One Texas shop reported getting only 4 Ram trucks in a month, compared to an average of 20 to 25 during normal periods. The used market is also feeling the pinch as fewer new vehicles become available. Prices for used Rams are rapidly increasing, and some purchasers are being priced out of the market entirely. It is especially difficult for persons who rely on their vehicles for employment. One contractor in Missouri said he had to postpone increasing his fleet since the cost of even a 3-year-old Ram had risen by about $7,000 since the beginning of the year. Then there is Chrysler, a brand that has fought for years to stay relevant in a swiftly changing auto industry. For Chrysler, the current situation has simply exacerbated previous problems. The Windsor assembly plant in Ontario, which makes the Chrysler Pacifica minivan, has been entirely shut down. The Pacifica is Chrysler's most recognizable and popular model, particularly among families and rideshare drivers seeking spaciousness, comfort, and versatility. However, with production halted and no clear restart date, merchants are quickly running out of stock. In a matter of weeks, several dealerships' minivan sections have gone from crowded to empty. Parents who wanted to exchange in their old Pacificas for new ones are now being told that they will have to wait months, if not longer, for inventory to return. Some are switching to other brands entirely, preferring Honda or Toyota alternatives. This is a trend that could irreversibly harm Chrysler's already vulnerable market position. The Chrysler 300, another vehicle remaining in the list, is in a vulnerable position. With revenues already in decline, higher production costs caused by tariffs could be the final nail in the coffin. Analysts believe that without a big strategic shift or new investment, Chrysler could face a silent phase-out in the coming years. What connects all of these brand-specific difficulties is how tariffs have highlighted vulnerabilities in Stellantis' business approach. The corporation, like many modern automakers, has optimized for efficiency by manufacturing across borders. This entails assembling automobiles with parts from several nations, often based on labor or material cost differences. It is a system that worked well under stable trade conditions, but is now becoming a problem as import costs rise and geopolitical unpredictability grows. Stellantis' brands are all affected differently, yet the core problem remains the same. A supply chain designed for global collaboration is now fighting to thrive in a fragmented trade climate, and the longer these conditions last, the greater the harm, not only to sales and profitability, but also to brand identity, consumer trust, and long-term survival. Now the costs are beginning to mount, not only for automakers like Stellantis, but also for consumers, dealerships, suppliers, and working families across North America. According to data collated from multiple industry studies, including Terran, Globe, and Fortune, the additional tariffs are expected to cost the automotive sector approximately $17.7 billion. Stellantis alone is estimated to account for around $41.9 billion, or nearly 40% of the overall impact. What is the reason? Stellantis focuses extensively on cross-border manufacture, which means their vehicles are built using components from multiple nations. This method, while effective under free trade conditions, becomes prohibitively expensive when tariffs are imposed. Each engine, gearbox, or electrical component that crosses a border now carries a significant cost. For a worldwide firm with dozens of factories in North America and Europe, this is more than just a hiccup. It is a complete diversion. Stellantis and other automakers must now either absorb the extra expenses, pass them on to customers, or significantly restructure their operations. And in reality, most are forced to do a combination of all three. The most immediate effect has been an increase in automobile pricing. Industry analysts predict that the average cost of a new vehicle will rise by $2,000 to $4,000 over the next year. For many buyers, that is enough to make a significant difference, particularly those already dealing with high inflation, rising mortgage rates, or tighter personal budgets. To put this in perspective, a Jeep Compass that was formerly priced around $28,000 might now cost more than $32,000. A Ram 1500, already considered a premium purchase by many, could easily cost $50,000 or more. These gains are not purely hypothetical. Dealers have already begun to modify their prices, taking into account not just the direct costs of tariffs, but also the secondary effects, such as supply shortages and delayed delivery. For many families, the price increase means hundreds of dollars more in monthly payments, if they can even get financing. Auto loans are already susceptible to progressively rising interest rates, and increased vehicle prices result in larger loans with longer durations. Over a 5-year period, period, a $3,000 increase can result in several $100s in higher interest. Buyers with inadequate credit or lower salaries may find the additional expense prohibitive. It is not only the new car market that is being impacted. Demand for secondhand cars has increased in tandem with the rise in new vehicle prices. This has resulted in higher pricing across the board, including for vehicles that would have been considered affordable just a few years ago. A used car that previously sold for $15,000 may suddenly be advertised for $18,000 or more. The ripple effect has the greatest impact on the entry-level end of the market, excluding first-time buyers and those living paycheck to paycheck. At the dealership level, managers are dealing with a twofold crisis: less inventory and fewer clients ready to pay the increased pricing. One dealer in Illinois said that showroom traffic was down nearly 40% from the same period last year. They also stated that financing applications were being denied at a higher rate than typical, owing to larger loan amounts that did not match customers' credit profiles. For automakers, this circumstance presents a challenging balancing act. They cannot afford to absorb all of the additional costs alone, not without reducing profits or cutting shortcuts elsewhere. At the same time, imposing too much expense on consumers' risks results in lost sales and market share. It is a no-win situation that is already resulting in some difficult judgments. Several manufacturers, including Stellantis and GM, have announced project freezes and spending cuts in an effort to maintain financial stability. Investments in new models, particularly electric vehicles, are being paused, hiring plans are being revised, and some employee benefits are being quietly decreased. In a business where long-term planning is critical, the uncertainty generated by these tariffs has made it more difficult than ever to prepare forward. One official from a major automaker, commenting anonymously to the Detroit News, stated that 3 scheduled vehicle launches had to be postponed owing to budgetary constraints caused by tariffs. Another stated that they were analyzing contracts with over 200 vendors to determine where expenses may be reduced. These may appear to be difficulties at the corporate level, but they quickly trickle down. Suppliers are obliged to reduce shifts, lay off employees, or hike their own pricing, resulting in a cycle of instability. Another area seeing hardship is electric vehicle production. Many EV models are made in the United States, so you would expect them to be immune to tariffs, but that has not been the case. GM, for example, recently laid off hundreds of workers at its Factory Zero plant in Detroit, which is solely dedicated to electric vehicles. The Hummer EV, Silverado EV, and Escalade ESV are among the models produced there. However, the problem is more than just tariffs. It is also about demand. These automobiles, while innovative, have extraordinarily exorbitant prices. A Hummer EV can cost well over $80,000, and even the less expensive Silverado EV has been lying on lots unsold. Dealers are lowering prices by $10,000 to $20,000 simply to move inventory. However, interest rates remain low. One Tennessee dealer had to send in a discounted Silverado EV only for a promotional film, hoping that the exposure would spark demand. It did not. Consumers have repeatedly demonstrated that while they are open to the notion of electric vehicles, they are not necessarily willing to commit, particularly at high prices or with extended charging times. And without dependable charging infrastructure, particularly in rural locations, many purchasers believe EVs are still impractical. The fact that these EVs are manufactured domestically has not protected them from the market downturn. If anything, it demonstrates that even tariff-free manufacture cannot ensure success if the product does not meet market demand. So what will happen next? If prices continue to rise while demand softens, manufacturers may have to reconsider their entire strategy. Some may relocate more production back to the United States, but this will require time, investment, and a stable policy climate. Others may reduce their presence in North America entirely, focusing instead on regions where business costs remain low. Meanwhile, customers confront difficult choices. Do people strain their budgets and incur additional debt for a new car? Do they keep their existing vehicle for a few more years? Or do they completely reduce their expectations, opting for smaller or used models instead of the trucks and SUVs they previously desired? The current atmosphere is pressuring both businesses and individuals to make concessions. And while the tariffs were intended to stimulate American manufacturing and employment development, early indications suggest that the industry may be contracting rather than expanding. Some jobs are being created, but others are disappearing just as swiftly. Investments are made, but they are also canceled or postponed. What began as a political initiative to promote domestic production has become a multi-dimensional catastrophe, affecting not only automakers, but also customers, workers, workers, and global trade systems. In Canada, for example, there is growing discontent. Thousands of workers were temporarily laid off when the Windsor assembly plant, located directly over the river from Detroit, closed. Many observers are skeptical, notwithstanding the official description of a production pause. Some feel Stellantis, like other international firms, is exploiting the tariff interruption as a convenient excuse to wind down activities that were originally intended to end. Some industry insiders agree, arguing that firms frequently seek external grounds to speed up internal choices. The car industry has seen this before. When economic or political situations change, it is not uncommon for businesses to make decisions that they have been quietly mulling for months or even years. In this case, critics argue that Stellantis had already been examining its North American operations for profitability, and the tariff just provided them with the narrative cover to act. Whether or not this is true, the perception has contributed to public skepticism and employee worry. Customers have been very vocal about their skepticism. In several online communities and car forums, conversations have progressed beyond simple concerns about rising prices or delays. Many people are increasingly questioning the goals of automakers themselves. Why aren't firms adapting faster? Why are some factories closed while others continue to operate with limited staff? Are these decisions driven by financial necessity, or are they part of a longer-term strategy to downsize, consolidate, or even quit specific markets? Some longtime vehicle owners have turned away from the brands totally. One common sentiment is that the consumer has the power. If purchasers do not support companies that they believe are failing to provide value or dependability, the companies will inevitably suffer. Several internet voices have urged automobile consumers to vote with their finances, opting to support firms that they believe still prioritize quality, accountability, and reliability. These discussions are not restricted to Stellantis. General Motors has received similar criticism, particularly with the announcement of temporary layoffs at their Factory Zero electric vehicle production. While those layoffs were not directly related to tariffs, their timing has contributed to a larger picture of instability. Factory Zero, once viewed as a symbol of GM's future, has now become an illustration of how rapidly momentum can stagnate when market conditions change and consumer enthusiasm fails to match expectations. Electric vehicles, in particular, have been the focus of this argument. Some of the cars created at Factory Zero, such as the Hummer EV, the Silverado EV, and the Cadillac Escalade ESV, have high prices that many buyers cannot afford. One vendor reported having brand new electric trucks on the lot for months, despite providing large discounts. The vehicles were fully charged, polished, and ready to go, but they were simply not selling. And it is not just about the price. In many parts of the country, the absence of charging infrastructure remains a barrier to widespread EV adoption. While urban places may have better established charging networks, many rural and suburban areas continue to lack accessible access. This has raised concerns among prospective purchasers, particularly those who drive long distances or depend on their automobiles for work. Some people choose petrol or diesel automobiles simply because they can refuel fast and reliably wherever they travel. The EV lag is not limited to North America either. In Europe, major manufacturers are secretly reducing electric vehicle production forecasts for the coming years, blaming slower demand and increased production costs. Combined with tariff-related disruptions, these changes call into question earlier confident projections that EVs will dominate global markets by the end of the decade. Back in the United States, the economic drama has taken on new dimensions. China's response to tariffs. In response, Beijing put a 125% tariff on some U.S. imports, exacerbating trade tensions. While Chinese officials have emphasized that they do not intend to go beyond that level, the message is obvious. The global trading climate is growing more turbulent, with so much of the world's production linked together. Even little changes can cause enormous disruptions. Shipping companies have reported that Chinese exporters have abandoned their goods in the middle of transit, which is a very unusual phenomenon. In some cases, importers have reportedly refused to accept container loads of products because the increased duties make them too expensive to sell. There are even rumors that some cargo is being dumped or redirected entirely. While these accusations have not been universally confirmed, they do demonstrate how volatile the situation has become. Experts warn that such instability can cause long-term damage. If supply chains become unstable, businesses may be hesitant to expand or invest. If consumers cannot trust that pricing would remain steady, they may avoid making significant purchases entirely. And if workers believe their employment is is no longer secure. This uncertainty affects everything from household finances to local economies. Ford has also found itself in the crossfire of popular discontent. While not directly implicated in the tariff-related shutdowns, the corporation has been under increased scrutiny for dependability difficulties and customer service complaints. One particularly remarkable case came from a business owner who had to replace a diesel engine in his Ford F-250 after only 74,000 miles, a repair that cost approximately $20,000. After obtaining a refurbished engine from Ford, it began leaking oil within a week. The truck was out of commission for 2.5 months during the repair process, generating significant setbacks for his plumbing firm. These stories contribute to a broader notion that certain automakers have abandoned quality and customer service. Buyers are more vocal about issues like broken engines, unfixable infotainment systems, and delayed deliveries. And in a competitive market, reputation is important. Once trust has been lost, it can be difficult and costly to regain. At the heart of it all is a question that no one appears to have a definitive solution to. What exactly does the future of the automobile business look like? With global supply networks under pressure, production prices rising, and consumer behavior changing, there are more unknowns than certainties. The concept of reshoring production to the United States may sound appealing in theory, but in practice it requires significant capital investment, labor training, and time. If demand continues to decline, manufacturers may be hesitant to commit to long-term initiatives. Trade policies may shift again following the next election. Tariffs could be eliminated, raised, or substituted with alternative measures. Governments might intervene with subsidies, tax incentives, or new infrastructure projects. Alternatively, they may prefer to let the market work itself out. In any case, automakers are likely to remain cautious in the near future, preferring short-term flexibility over risky, costly choices. For customers, it means negotiating an increasingly complex market. Prices are variable, stocks are irregular, and established brand reputations are under threat. People looking to buy a vehicle in 2025 or 2026 must evaluate more than just pricing and features. They will need to consider availability, resale value, and even geopolitical stability.